Hello there, people of the internet. I was asked to talk about the easiest cartridges to reload. And rather than just talk about the easy ones, I figured I'd go ahead and I'd make a list talking about the difficulty of reloading cartridges in ascending order. Now, of course, there's going to be exceptions to this rule, but I think that I got a good baseline for pretty much everything that you would want to expect. So, I got my list right here on my whiteboard. So first things first, one of the easiest cartridges to reload are straight wall pistol cartridges that have a rim on it. Think like 357 Magnum and 38 Special and 44 Magnum and that line of ammunition, the ones that look like this. These, even though 44 Magnum is a powerful round, it operates at relatively low pressures in comparison to like rifle ammunition. So, the reason why these right here are so good to learn how to reload on are, one, they headspace on the rim of the cartridge versus other cartridges that headspace on the neck of the cartridge. If it headspaces on the rim of the cartridge, then there's not a whole lot that can go wrong with that in comparison to headspacing on the neck. If it headspaces on the neck of a cartridge, then you have to make sure that all of your specs and tolerances are exactly where they need to be in order for that cartridge to be properly headspaced inside that firearm, versus the rim, which doesn't really have any operating force on it at all upon firing, unlike the neck of a cartridge. So if you were to go and fire this, the likelihood of the rim changing enough to throw off your headspace is so absolutely minor, especially with these pistol caliber cartridges. If you have, say, something off in your chamber to where the neck forms to the chamber, that can throw off your headspace with some other system, some other loading, some other rifle. That could be off enough to cause some issues with your actual headspacing. Your round might be slightly rattling around inside of that chamber. If you have a chamber that has too much tolerance in it for your sizing die, which is sized to really size down that brass that you're using, then you might run into some issues with head spacing on a neck. But head spacing on a rim, this is like foolproof. This is one of the reasons why rimmed cartridges were so popular, because it's so gosh darn easy to head space on a rim, because there's literally nothing that can go wrong as long as your rim is the proper thickness. So, on top of that, the next easiest thing, actually, let me throw this out there. There's certain rimmed cartridges that are easier to reload than others. Like 38 Special, I highly recommend people learn how to reload 38 Special. It's so easy that I literally used to reload it with a nail and a hammer. I don't recommend that, but it's possible. But the reason why I say 38 Special is because if you hand load 38 Special and you're loading and you fire it through a 357 Magnum, even if you do things like horribly wrong, the likelihood of you reaching a point of failure with that gun is so absolutely minute that you would have to really mess up in order to cause any damage to yourself or to your firearm. So the same thing with like 44 Special inside of a 44 Magnum. So just some things to consider, I guess. Alright, another really easy cartridge to reload. Pretty much any rimless straight wall pistol cartridge, like 9mm, 45 ACP, anything along those lines. They operate at really low pressures, and there's just nothing that can really go wrong with those. Even whenever you size them, the brass doesn't really stretch to the point of needing trimming all that often. Typically with rifle rounds, you want to trim your cases after like every 3 to 5 firings, depending on brass and manufacturer and etc, etc. There's a bunch that goes into that. But with pistol cartridges, like, very seldomly do I trim pistol cartridges, to the point where I think I've only done it like twice, maybe 3 times in my entire reloading career. It's just, you have to shoot them a lot for them to get to the point of needing trimmed. And because of that, they're stupid easy to reload. All you do is you size your brass to where it needs to be, and then you put primer, powder, and bullet in it, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about a lot of the things that you would normally have to worry about with more intensive things for reloading. They're just super easy to reload. So the next easiest one is going to be straight wall rifle cartridges that have a rim, like say a 4570, like onto this trapdoor. Now, maybe not something like a trapdoor Springfield, because you got to pay attention to your 4570 loadings with this, because this is a super old design. It's a super old gun. It's just not meant for modern 4570. So if you do have a modern 4570, then they can be super, super easy to learn how to reload, for the same reasons why pistol cartridges are super easy to learn how to reload. And that's because they headspace on the rim, and straight wall cartridges don't have a neck. Even if that straight wall cartridge does stretch, and it's going to take a lot of time for that straight wall cartridge to stretch, even if that straight wall cartridge does begin to stretch, it would have to stretch a significant amount until you started having issues. So you could get a lot of life out of your brass from a straight wall rifle cartridge that headspaces on the rim. Now, as far as the straight wall rimless cartridges, like say, I don't know, what's something that comes to mind? 350 Legend, I think that's a straight wall one. Those are a little bit on the more difficult side because they tend to be ran in semi-auto platforms, so you have to make sure that everything is proper on those to properly run through your semi-auto so you don't end up breaking anything. So up next on the list is low-powered neck cartridges, like cartridges that have a neck on it but are relatively low power. Like as far as pistols go, the 30 caliber Mauser comes to mind, the 7.62 Tokarev comes to mind. As far as rifle cartridges go, something like the 30-40 Krag comes to mind. And the reason why I bring these up are because that low power, even though you've got a cartridge that has a neck on it, that low power doesn't stretch the brass nearly as much as, say, a high power round does. And so as a result of that, you don't have to trim as often, and you get far more life out of your brass. It's just easier to run those particular cartridges than it is to run high power cartridges. So the next on the list is going to be those high power cartridges, but specifically the ones that have a rim. Like, say, for example, 303 British or 7.62 by 54R. I thought I had my Mosin sitting next to me that I was going to show off, but I guess not. Ah, there she is. Something like 7.62 by 54R or 303 British, and that's simply because they headspace on the rim of the cartridge versus that neck of the cartridge. Even if your neck of the cartridge is off, even if your sizing die is off and your chamber has too much tolerance, whenever that round goes off, it's going to fire form to that chamber. It's going to size itself to that particular chamber. And if that was how it determined headspace, that would be bad. But since rimmed rounds like 303 British and 7.62 by 54R, since they headspace on the rim of the cartridge, even if that is off, once it fire forms, that's not what holds headspace. What holds headspace is the rim, so your rifle's not going to care, not unless it's like really significantly off to the point of rupturing brass, but that's a completely different story. So your rimmed cartridges in your rifles like this, you could get away with a lot more in terms of tolerance as opposed to something that headspaces on the neck. And the next easiest one is going to be those full power rifle rounds that headspace on the neck, like say 8mm Mauser and 30-06 and 308 and cartridges that are like that among that nature. You have to make sure that your sizing is proper and that everything is done properly with that cartridge because it headspaces on the neck, and if your sizing of that cartridge is off to the point to where that cartridge is not properly headspaced, then you might potentially run into a pretty significant issue. So I do want to talk about the 7.5 Swiss. I have that specifically written down right there. The 7.5 Swiss is one of the hardest neck sizing, like it's one of the hardest cartridges that I have personally reloaded, and anyone else who's reloaded 7.5 Swiss can probably relate. Now, as far as rimless cartridges go that headspace on the neck, I don't know what it is about 7.5 Swiss that essentially requires trimming and sizing with every single shot that you fire. The brass just does not last very long, and it's just a really difficult round to reload. It shouldn't be. It should be comparable to pretty much all of the other rimless cartridges out there that headspace on the neck. But for some particular reason, this particular cartridge has just always given me difficulties through all of my Swiss straight pull rifles. They all seem to expand that brass way more than any of my other cartridges, and it seems like whenever I size it down, I have to trim it every single time, and I don't like that. So the next most difficult one to reload is going to be magnum rifle rounds that have a belt on it, like say, I don't know, 7mm Remington Magnum. That's a commercial round, and it's got a magnum belt on it, and those can be a little bit tricky to reload. I never really bothered learning to reload those myself, mostly because I don't have a 7mm Remington Magnum. 300 Winchester Magnum also falls into that category. It's a Magnum round that has a belt on it, and if you don't know what that looks like, then I say go look it up, do some research on the Magnum belted rounds. I can't even think of why they would do that other than the fact of maybe having some more support there on that cartridge, since it is a Magnum round. That's a spicy round. Alright, the next most difficult one is going to be ammunition that has like crimped primers on it. One of the main reasons why I don't reload surplus brass is a lot of times, if we're talking about modern surplus, like modern 7.62 NATO and 5.56 and whatnot, the brass is like crimped around the primer. If you look at the primer of surplus ammunition and you look at a commercial round that's meant to be reloadable, and you look at the primer pockets, the primer pocket on your surplus round is going to be, it's going to look smaller, and that's because the brass was crimped in. You're going to see like a little circle around the primer where that brass was pressed down into that primer to kind of help with holding it in place. And punching those primers out and pushing new primers in is so difficult that I have had it destroy both brass and primers before, and I don't bother with that stuff. Alright, last but not least, the most difficult thing to reload is Berdan primed ammunition. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, you can reload Berdan Prime with this particular specialty tool or this particular technique using a hydraulic system or hydraulic press, or you can do this certain thing to be able to reload Berdan primers. And I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying it's the most difficult thing. If your efforts of reloading require a specialty tool to be able to remove Berdan primers, or some sort of specialty technique to be able to remove those primers, then that is definitely the most difficult way to be able to reload. Another big issue with these Berdan primers is a lot of these Berdan primers are found in surplus ammo, and the size of the primers are different based off of whatever country of origin it is that these primers are coming from. Like Yugoslavian primers are slightly different than Czechoslovakian primers, which are slightly different than Egyptian primers, which are slightly different than German primers. And if you want to, like, say, get, I don't know, some tool ammo or some Russian steel case or something like that, that is like a modern production Berdan Prime ammunition, then I'm sure that you could go out and source the size of primers that you need, but there's a lot of effort that comes into the removal of those primers and the installation of the new primers. You got to make sure that you install them properly to the point to where you won't set them off, and you can't just drill a hole inside of the Berdan Prime case to make it boxer primed, because all of our sized boxer primers are different sizes than the Berdan primers. Like large rifle, which is the largest boxer primer that I can think of without getting into some specialty stuff, if you tried installing that inside of a Berdan Prime system, it's just going to fall right out because it's a different size. So those are definitely one of the more difficult rounds to reload. It's possible, just not something that I'd want to bother with. So there you go. There's my list of easiest to hardest things to reload. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.